Have you ever noticed yourself talking one way at work and another way with your friends and wondered which one is the real you? Welcome to It's Both, the podcast for people living in the gray, where mixed emotions, hard decisions, and real life transitions are not only acknowledged, but they're normal. Each week, we dive into real stories about holding multiple truths, building resilience, and making sense of life's messy moments. I'm your host, Nikki P., a therapist turned storyteller. And today we are talking about code switching. And it often means moving between languages, but it can also describe how we adjust our tone, our words, and our presence depending on who's in the room. Today we're talking to Darius Moore and hearing about his story, growing up in the military, finding his voice, moving between corporate spaces and community spaces. You can hear what it's like to meet people where they are without losing yourself. If you've ever asked, am I adapting to be understood or disappearing to be accepted? This conversation sits right in that tension. So let's jump in. Welcome, Darius. So good to see you.
So good to see you as well.
I'm excited to have you here. And I am just excited for everybody else to get to hear a little bit from you. But before we jump in, would just love it if you could tell everybody a little bit about who Darius is.
Okay. So Darius is so I grew up in rural West Tennessee, about an hour in a little city, about an hour from Memphis, called Jackson, Tennessee. Shout out to 731. Shout out to West Tennessee. I grew up there. I grew up there from the time I was in middle school on. My dad was military, so we moved around a little bit. I was actually born in Alaska.
Oh, fun fact.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So I grew up in West Tennessee, went to MTSU, left and came back a couple times to the Middle Tennessee area, and I've been here since 2018 with my wife Felicia and my daughter. We live out in Sumner County, and so that's a little bit about who I am. My titles are father, husband, brother, son. My parents live in Jackson. I have a brother that lives in Murfreesboro, and then the rest of my siblings are in Jackson, Tennessee as well. So that's a little bit high level of who I am. And titles wise, I have my own business consulting practice, and so I'm the managing partner, managing consultant for the MDC group.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love learning these little tidbits about you that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we move on, just a little bit deeper, what is a little bit about who you are beneath all of that, your personality, like quirks, things that you like, things that make you you?
So it's funny. I always have this part of the conversation with folks when they meet me, when we get a chance to spend some time together for the first time, or we haven't caught up in a while, or they're getting to know me. I say, hey, I seem extroverted. I seem like I really enjoy being around people. I do,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm naturally an introvert. I've just grown into this person that I am, where I'm able to kind of shine, and when I get into social spaces and connect with people. I grew up in the military, so we moved around quite a bit. I had to learn how to adapt to being around a lot of different people. And I come from a really big family. My mom has 12 brothers and sisters, and my dad has nine, or had nine and had 12. And so I had a ton of cousins. And so I just learned how to, I learned my voice. I'll share this as a general aside. I was listening to the Renegade podcast with the boss and Mr. President, aka
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama. And something Bruce said, and I'll quote it. He said, "If you weren't quiet, you wouldn't so desperately have searched for a way to speak." And so,
Mm.
for me, I grew up quiet, but I learn how to speak, learn what my voice was, and so I love words. You'll probably hear me talking a bunch, but I love words, and that's part
Mm-hmm.
of why I talk is because at some point I didn't have a voice, and I found a voice. I found a way to articulate myself. I found a way to express who I am, and so words have a lot of power to me. And so I've always liked talking. I've learned to really embrace conversating and connecting with people and hearing their stories and sharing my own. So that's a little bit more deeper about who I am. I come from a big family. I'm the middle child of five siblings. So, just had to carve out my own space.
Man, that's a true middle child right there. Two
100%.
before, two after.
Yeah, and it's a little
Wow.
gap in between too. So, I was big brother I was little brother. I was the baby for a long time. And
Mm.
then these two little knuckleheads came along, and then I became big bro. And
Yeah.
so I'm caught in that sandwich sibling space where
Yeah.
it's two above and two below. And so I just learn how to adapt in whatever role that I've been in.
Yeah. So, speaking of voice and finding your voice, today we're talking a bit about code switching. So, talk to me, I think first, what is code switching? How does this show up for you? And how does this create that tension or that bothness, right? Between feeling and thinking multiple things at once throughout that experience?
So I'm glad that you asked me what is it,
Hmm.
and not just what is it for me, because I think that the definition talks about it being able to move from within different linguistic styles, and so basically it talks about code switching as a way to move from one language to another,
Hmm.
adapting to your environment. And but colloquially, and how I've seen it and how I understand it, it's really learning to adapt to different spaces based upon what the need is. It's not just what you say; it's how you say it. It's how you present. And I think that's really where I look at code switching is it's the way you present yourself based upon the environment you're in. And so that's just how I see it. And for me, code switching as a black man in my society here in America and really just I think throughout the world, specifically in the North America area,
Hmm.
it is just been about learning how to adapt to the space that you're in and not just where you come from.
Hmm.
I learned how to adapt the way I talk in the corporate world, learn how to adapt the way I interact with folks in that space versus, back in my own community, back in rural West Tennessee versus here in Nashville. It's just learning how to navigate the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are some ways, like I think you spoke to it a little bit, but like for you being a black man in all these different spaces, how like what are some examples of how that's shown up for you switching between the two and what switches, right? Like what's different for you in that experience?
So that's a great question, and so I think about it from the linguistic perspective. The definition of wise. I learned to, and I said this at the beginning is I love words. I
Mhm.
had to learn to really love to use
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
Whether it was I say sobriquets, so learning how to use slang terms and learning how to
Mhm.
use the popular trendy vernacular, but also how to use those big words, those $5 and $10 words, as the old
Mhm.
folks used to say, instead of the 1 cent words. So
Yeah.
learning how to use words that certain environments and certain people in certain communities understood better than others. And so, when in the black community and in, I'll just speak to my own experience. I won't generalize this, but for me, growing up in rural West Tennessee, especially coming from the military, I was taught to always be very intentional about the words that I use and articulate them. And I couldn't say words if I didn't know what they meant. And
Mm.
so, learn to read the dictionary. That's what, my dad had us reading the dictionary. If we say something and it didn't make sense and he didn't know it, and we didn't really know what it meant, he made us look it up. And
Mm.
so, and growing up in my home life was, you just didn't use slang. You didn't use a lot of, those just colloquialisms. You didn't use those things that were just like local to wherever you were, or what you would talk around and your friends. You had to say words and you had to articulate them. But
Mm.
then when I got out into the community, into the black community, whether it be in the more rural setting or in a urban setting in the city, I had to learn how to talk. I had to learn how to use slang. I had to learn how to not sound like I'm a white boy, not
Mm.
sound too articulate and too proper. I had to learn how to just kind of relax my what I said and not say a whole lot of words and kind of be more reserved. But then as I got older and I moved into a professional space, you have to know how to use your words. You
Mhm.
have to know how to articulate because but before you say anything, they see you.
Mm.
Think about the movie, How They See Us. There's a perception of you, but then when you open your mouth and speak, you either validate that or you invalidate it, or you cause a contradiction. And
Mhm.
I've always wanted to invalidate it. Not necessarily cause a contradiction, but invalidate the perception of who I am. You see, I got my braids, my
Mhm.
my cornrows, and this is a more recent style. But I've had long hair, I've had braids, I've had dreads, I've had the beard, and
Mhm.
there's a perception that comes with that. And so, I think I more often than not surprise people when I start talking,
Hmm.
especially in the corporate space, in the business space, in those main street
Yeah.
settings, like in a business or office environment. I talk, and I use my words. I know how to articulate myself, but that's something I had to learn how to do. But then when I have to navigate back into my own community, into those more informal settings, you got to dial back those words. You can't just be talking and saying all these big words and saying things that most people are not regular words people aren't regularly using. So when I say like colloquialisms,
Mhm.
what the hell is that? Like
Yeah.
that's a word that I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
sobriquet, like these are things that I've learned over time and words that I've learned over time and they make sense to me, but they may not make sense to the environment that I'm in. And so, it's also a bit of EQ, learning how to have that
Yeah.
emotional intelligence to understand, when you should be very articulate and use high level vernacular versus just talking regular and talking like, the local folks and, you know,
Mhm.
so on and so forth.
You're saying that, like, what are some of the assumptions that you've seen on like on either side, right? Like walking into a corporate space before speaking, you have assumptions versus what you show up as. And maybe the flip side of that is like, what are some assumptions that you've seen show up in more of a cultural setting, like outside with friends, community, like some assumptions that have popped up there that maybe also didn't feel like you either?
So on the corporate side, on the business side, I think the assumption is again when you see a black man with a beard and with dreads or
Mm-hmm.
braids, you're like, yeah, do you know where he's supposed to be? So like I more often than not, a lot of times I'll go into a corporate space or an office space and I'll get that. Can I help you? Or like they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out why I'm there and like do you know where you need to go or is it somebody you're here to see or I get that often and this it can be a little bit of a microaggression, but
Yeah.
it also
Yeah.
could just be like, you know, a natural defense mechanism to make sure that somebody is, it's not a there's no stranger danger,
Mm.
and I get that, and what that looks like for me internally is, I just I know how to present myself. If
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna have my hair braided up and my beard out, I'm probably gonna have a button up shirt on.
Mm.
I'm gonna be wearing slacks. I'm gonna have a corporate vibe to me. And I've always liked clothes and fashion and style. So that's not really, I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel uncomfortable in that space,
Yeah.
but that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I go back into my own community, it's I got that you look like a pastor. Like, are you a pastor? I went to a community event for like in North Nashville area, and I went to like a library or something like that, and
Uh-huh.
I had one of the kids say, "Are you a pastor?" And that's not the first time I got that because I
Really
dress up. I'm always like the one
funny.
that's most buttoned up, but I would much
Yeah.
rather be dressed
Yeah.
up and not and be able to pull off some ties and blazers
Mm-hmm.
than be looking for it and look like I'm not eyeball out. And so for me, it's just learning how to learn how to adapt the way I present, whether it
Mm.
be, what I say and say, hey, I'm here to see somebody specifically, or
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I'm here for an appointment, or hey, I'm here for XYZ, or like, start
Mm-hmm.
talking to them and get to know them like, hey, how you doing? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a way of disarming people when I go into like those corporate settings, but also when I'm in a casual environment, I'm looking around and seeing what's going on before I speak and say anything. I'm listening to who's talking and what they're saying and how they're saying it, and then
Mm.
adjusting what I say when I first talk, or
Yeah.
say, hey, what's up, how's it going, or I say like, you know, you know, how is your day going, depending on the casual environment I'm in.
I mean, and it's interesting because it seems like from your upbringing and what you've shared about it, like, okay, you were born in Alaska, but you grew up in West Tennessee,
Yeah,
which is very different than Middle Tennessee. Well,
very much so.
or Nashville, or really any little pocket you can go to. Like it's all very different, right? All those spaces are very different. And you had a military family, and you were a middle child, and you were in these different spaces where maybe your dad had, or mom or parents or whoever had like expectations around you don't say a word if you don't know it, like read the dictionary, great things to instill in children, like high expectations, which is huge, right? But, do you feel like the experience of code switching for you, did it come about as almost like a response to negative experiences? Like, was there any part of this kind of movement towards experiencing code switching that came out of a negative reaction to being in a space where, whether it was like maybe your first time in a corporate space or your first time like out in the community as a Black man in rural Tennessee? Does that question make sense? Like, did it come from that space or was it more just like, oh no, this is kind of what you do in different spaces. You show up in a different way.
So yeah, that question does make sense, and my answer would be is both. See what I did there?
Yes. Set it up.
So it is both, and literally because sometimes I would say probably early on, it was a defensive mechanism. It was a response to the environment or
Mhm.
the external stimulation, like
Mhm.
whatever somebody said or somebody did, or like, the input that I got from other people, who I
Yeah.
am and how I present. It was like, hey, I specifically, a great example of that. I specifically remember when I was in undergrad at MTSU, I had a advisor say, I sent him an email. I was trying to get change in my schedule or switch my major. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I sent him this email. And mind you, I'm like, I know I'm talking to a professor. Like I hadn't done this before. I'm
Mhm.
in early in my college career, and I sent this email. I had already like made sure I had the right good vernacular in there. And
Yeah.
I remember when I met with him, something specifically he said was, you use a lot of big words. He's like, you got to dumb it down a little bit, like make it more simple. And I was like, huh. And that always stuck with me because it was like, that sounds so strange coming from, you know, a
Yeah.
professor or somebody in authority, like to say to a student. I always
Right,
thought that was
right.
odd. I was like, dumb it down, make it
Mhm.
simplify it. Like that seems so crazy to me.
Mhm.
But it was one of those moments where I was just like, okay, I see how people perceive me, or I see how I see how people act. I see how
Mhm.
people what their expectations are, and
Yeah.
so code switching for me sometimes has been a result of adjusting to expectations
Hmm.
or adapt and not just adapting to the environment, but adjusting to the people that what they're expecting from me. So it could be like if I'm talking to a professor, talking to a supervisor, talking to somebody that's a business connection. I might say, instead of me talking like I would talking to a friend, I may be more formal in my structure, but I know
Mhm.
not to overstate it. And so
Mm.
my code switching has been partly that, but then I'd also say it's just been a way of presenting myself in a way that I want to be perceived.
Mm.
Like I want to be perceived as a professional. I want to be perceived as somebody that's respectable. I want to be perceived as somebody that people can look to as having a level of expertise.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be perceived as a novice. I don't, I want to. It's part of why I dress up. Part of why I present myself in a certain way. As Dion say, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good. If you play good, they pay good. And I
Mhm.
learned that, Deion Sanders, shout out to Deion Sanders. That's something that I learned and adapted to as I present myself. And, in terms of code switching, it's like, you know, if they don't know, they don't know, if they don't know what to expect, because it can be a contradiction when you show up. You got your braids and your beard, but you button up to the T, you know, it's almost like it's disarming because they don't know what to expect.
Mhm.
There's no assumptions because it's like, I don't
Yeah.
know what this guy is going to be doing. And so when I present it, like, oh, okay, it's a refreshing, epiphany, or it's like this
Mhm.
moment where they're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is what his vibe is, and that's been the case most of my adult and professional career. It's been a lot of that. It's been disarmament. That's what the code switching has been about. It's been about how can I disarm this environment and disarm this person so that
Mhm.
I can present in a way, or I can have a conversation with them, or I can
Yeah.
be at least accepted into this space.
Gosh, yeah, and it's so like, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about myself too, and I'm going, I understand that a lot for different reasons, and obviously we're very different people, but you know, for me, it's kind of become a defense mechanism for a long time of a way, not saying this is for you, but I have a question here, so stick with me here.
Come on with it.
I'm wondering for you, like for me, that has been a way that I can control a situation to some degree. A way for when I feel unsafe or when things are unsteady around me. I've always been that person, typically, who's like, I'm just going to be easygoing. Like, I can adjust and fit in wherever I need to be and still try to be authentic. Like, I don't want to not be me, but I can be real and also, fit in with who you're around, just kind of like you're saying. But what I noticed as I got older was like, it kind of became a crutch for me, not all the time. Like, I think there's a healthy balance for sure, but for me, I was doing it so much that it was like, who am I really? Like, if these people weren't around and
It's
these
good.
people weren't around,
It's good,
like,
Nikki P.
what would
It's
I be
good.
saying right now? And how would I be saying it if I wasn't so worried about how the receiving person was going to perceive me? And I think that threw me for a bit and I'm still working through it, but I'm curious for you how you balance that tension of like, obviously each of us has a different part of ourselves that we show up in a different space, right? Like Father Darius is not going to be showing up the same way that, leader Darius is in a workplace, right? or husband Darius or son, or they're all going to be slightly different. So that's like a natural thing. But how do you balance that with not losing your true self? Because that's been hard for me. And I'm curious for you how that's been.
Well, I'll start by saying, you know, I'm sorry that you've had to do that, and it's your
Thank you.
environment has forced you to do that. Because I can understand. You talk about the question you asked earlier about is it an external thing or is it just
Hmm.
I want to present? I think that's what it is. A big part of it. It is you want to be you want to be presenting yourself as a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that's really what it was. When I talk about disarming, it is a lot of what you
Hmm.
said is like, you wanna be able to provide a little bit of that, "Hey, I'm okay, like, I'm
Hmm.
acceptable, I'm I'm good, like, I'm not a problem, I'm not anything to worry about."
Hmm.
I think that's a big part of it, and for me, it has been that, like, I wanna be able to, I don't wanna be perceived as a threat, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to in a lot of regards is like I don't want to be perceived as a threat because I know that that's the natural proclivity of people, especially here in the US, here in America. It's like, you know, the black man is a threat.
Hmm.
That's a conundrum, one of those big
Hmm.
words I like to use. That's one of those things that I've always pondered on in terms of how I present is like, do I need to be, do I need to dial it down? But trying to find your authentic self and all of that can be a bit of
Hmm.
a conflict. And so I think that, for me it's like the balance is like who is Darius? Like like
Hmm.
who am I? Like who do I want to be, from day to day? Who do I want to be? Who has God designed me to be?
Hmm.
And you know, God has designed me to be somebody who's positive. I joked with the guy I got connected to a while ago, who was actually a musician. A shout out to Mod Son on Instagram. He's a
Shout out.
alternative rocker, and we were talking, in our ride, and I actually was Ubering him, so which we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were talking in the ride, and I was like, just talking about my perception on life is like I'm optimistic, and that's who I am. Like I am an evangelist of optimism. Like
I love
I
that.
love God. I'm religious to a degree, but I'm very spiritual. I believe in God. But at the end of the day, like I'm firmly entrenched in the ideal and the value of love. And
Mm-hmm.
so in every instance, in every iteration, and everything that I do, I try to show love. Whether that be, being approachable,
Mm-hmm.
being perceived as non-threatening, being somebody that folks can feel comfortable with. It really comes down to me just being able to, being in a position where folks can feel love and feel connected, but also
Mm-hmm.
they're receptive to the love that I'm trying to give. And, so that's my authenticity. That's really who
Mm-hmm.
I am. And so I don't, when you talk about it, trying to find a balance. The balance for me is, am I showing love today? Am I
Mm-hmm.
and the way that I show up, does it breed love?
Mm-hmm.
Does it showcase the love of Christ? Does it, do people feel like they can relax a bit and share who they are and their story? And so, when I present, that's what I try to do. I try to present myself in a way that allows the love to be shown and felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so the identity crisis and those conflicts of personality,
Mm-hmm.
they're not as much of an issue for me because, if I show up as myself and I show up in a way that is trying to showcase love and show love and be receptive of love, like none of that stuff will phase me.
Yeah. What a great answer. I mean, and also I'm just sitting here like, here's the both again. I think my heart hurts for you, and I'm sure many others who like are going through something similar because basically what you're describing in a lot of ways is, well, the first part of what you're describing is you're having to do this because people have such assumptions and judgments about you as a black man, which shouldn't exist in the first place, but it does. And the fact that it's so ingrained in our society, like based on racism and like systemic oppression, that there are these ideas about you as a black man that have permeated so much so that you as a child realized I have to show up in a way that is not threatening. And so I just want to acknowledge, like, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And second, it breaks my heart to hear that has to be such a part of how you approach life because of others. assumptions and judgments. And then how you've then done something beautiful in your approach to going, even though this stuff shouldn't exist, even though this is a response to something really messed up, I'm still going to approach it with love. And like at the end of the day, even though we shouldn't be in a society where like that's the assumption and I'm having to like come in here in a space and code switch to make everybody comfortable because of the color of my skin. And yet you're still approaching it out of a sense of, I want to be authentic and show love everywhere I go. I mean, that's just what a way to take something and make it beautiful and show love, even in that simple, not simple, but in that act.
I appreciate that. You know, that just affirms, you know, what I'm trying to do, which is
Hmm.
like, I'm trying to remove barriers. My whole, and so, and we'll talk about this later. The podcast that I created is called Let's Build Something, and
Hmm.
the idea is, I'm trying to break down barriers and build bridges. Use those barriers and all those bricks and wood that you build your walls up with to build bridges. And build bridges of connection. And so, you know, my my mode operando, my main focus and how I typically operate and approach life is
Yeah.
perspective. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's a slight shift because, I had to really work at being empathetic. Like that's just not something I have a natural
Mm.
inclination to do. My wife is a very much an empath.
She is.
Shout out to my boo Fifi.
Love you,
So
Felicia.
so she's an empath, but she's taught me to be more empathic. But how that looks for me is, I try to shift my perspective on things. And so instead of me just saying, this is what it is and it's so black
Hmm.
and white and this person is this and XYZ, and it's like, no, we're dynamic. Everyone is dynamic. We're not just numbers, we're not just stats, and
Hmm.
we're not just descriptions. We're
Yeah.
we're actual people who have lives and have roles and responsibilities. And so, it always is a matter of a shift in perspective for me. So, whether it be like I could internalize the fact that I'm a black man in America and, there's a natural target on my back. Like,
Hmm.
well, I don't think I really realized that until, when my dad retired. So I said I'm from West Tennessee. I grew
Hmm.
up in North Carolina, Fayetteville.
Hmm.
Shout out to Fayetteville. Yeah, Fayetteville. And so Fort Bragg, which is Fort Liberty now, is this whole thing. But so I grew up in the military. I grew up in North Carolina, and in the military, you are a part of a mixed. Yeah, I would consider
Hmm.
it more like mosaics. Nashville's more like a mosaic, and I say like Miami, New York, LA. Those are more like mosaics because there's all these different cultures that coexist as opposed to becoming ingratiated in what's happening in those communities. They just coexist. They still maintain their identity, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But growing up in the military, you just become you like everybody's the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
We're all the same. Like there's not a whole lot of hierarchy other than the ranks.
Hmm.
The,
Hmm.
if you're an officer, you're enlisted, but like the families of the enlisted, we're just all existing because we
Yeah.
have to. Like that's what it is. And until my dad retired and I actually went into the civilian world, I didn't realize how black and white society was. Like I just
Mm.
this is we all just get on. I didn't feel like I had to carry myself a certain way when I was a kid. Like I
Yeah.
walk through all the neighborhoods. I remember jumping over fences and running through backyards, all of that stuff like that. As long as you have a dog, I think I was cool. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna run through your yard. Like it ain't
Yeah.
no big deal. Climb your tree. But then when I when we got to Tennessee, I realized those lines are very starkly
Hmm.
drawn. It
Yeah.
is very much you are here, I'm here, or like, hey, stay on your side. Or
Mm.
even if we go and we mix and it mingles, like, but we going back to our corners, and it's like
Mm.
that's such a weird way to exist. Like humans aren't we're not designed to be alone. We're designed to be communal. And it's like, why do we insist on creating these unnatural constructs of segregation and
Hmm.
separation? And then so, I didn't recognize that until I got in middle school, which is one of the most awkward times to see that and
Man.
observe and experience that.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
that was my initial exposure to like there are these
Wow.
differences. And because of that, like I learned to adapt to it, and I had to learn to shift my perspective.
Gosh, for sure. And I mean, you've shared a little bit about like how kind of this code switching or this approach to shifting how you show up in a space based on the people you're around has been super beneficial and it's helped you. And it's like, you've talked a little bit about that. Have there been times where it's been harmful or like more of a barrier? And there might not be, but I'm just curious if the flip side of that has ever existed.
Yes, that is a wonderful question, and I say it's a wonderful question because when we talk about code switching, and the way we address code switching, I think we think about it in the terms of how people of color and part of the BIPOC community have to adjust to the corporate spaces in these mainstream areas, but we
Yeah.
don't always address it in terms of what it looks like in our own communities because
Yeah.
I for a long time and probably still, and there may be listeners that listen to this and watch this and say, hey, he sound kind of white. He talk kind of white. And it's like, that's what it is. Like on the flip side, it's like, you using really big words, you articulating everything, you don't kind of talk with a little bit of a slang, and it's not that way everywhere. That's not
Sure.
like it's not a one stroke approach. But in a lot of the spaces that I've been in, and I learned to talk to everybody. I like to say, I can communicate with anybody in any space about anything. There's
Mhm.
nothing that is above me. And that's not me being arrogant. It really is just
No.
me learning. I've learned how to adapt. But,
Yeah.
again, the reason that is because, you come in too proper and too articulate into certain spaces, they're gonna look
Mm.
at you as the kids say, as an op. They're gonna look at you as like, who are you? Who is this cop?
Yeah.
Who is this?
Yeah.
Who is this dude? Like, who is this Uncle Tom? Like, and
Mm.
that's not what I want to. That's not the perception, and that's not the vibe that I want to give off. But it's also not. That's not who I am.
Mm.
And so, but I'm also not going to apologize for being articulate and apologize for being well spoken and apologize for loving words and knowing how to use them properly. But at the same time, like I adapt to the space that I'm in. Like I want people to feel like, just like I say, I want to disarm the mainstream, the non people of color, my Anglo brethren. I
Mhm.
want to disarm them in those environments, those corporate
Yeah.
spaces. I also want to make sure that folks, when I'm around my community, because I'm always betting on black, when I'm
Mhm.
around my folks, they feel comfortable. They feel like I'm a part of them. They feel like I'm a reflection of them. They feel like they can be themselves with me. Like,
Mhm.
and I know more often than not, and I've seen it firsthand. I feel it all the time. Like there's a little bit of a level up adjustment to how people interact and talk with me, and when they're people of color, especially like certain environments. And I appreciate that. I want folks to level up, but at the same time, I don't want anybody to feel like they have to. Like I
Yeah.
don't ever want to feel like folks have to adapt their language around me. But that's the flip side of being of code switching. You switch your codes going back into your own community. You have to learn
Mhm.
how to like talk to your folks, talk on their level, talk in a way they're receptive to, that is
Mhm.
disarming, that isn't like, who is this stranger? Like I have to tell, like I there's been times I have to tell folks like, who am I? Like, who are you? What do you do? Like, who are you connected to? Like, I got to be able, like, I'm such and such as kid, or my folks are them, or XYZ, or like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm with X person. Like there has to be a connectivity and a connective tissue to why I'm here and how I'm a part of this community. Like I have to identify that, and that can be off putting.
Mm.
Can
Yeah.
be it can sometimes be a little frustrating because you're like, I'm bad on black. Like I do everything I do to be, to make sure that like my community feels like they have space.
Mhm.
I try to show up as my authentic self, but I show up in a way that's going to be, you know, acceptable to the environment that I'm in. I'm not adjusting to necessarily the people. I'm adjusting to the environment.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
it isn't necessarily that I'm putting on as much as I'm just like, I need to know how to act. I need to know how to present. I need to know like what I need to say, how I need to say it. There are a lot of folks that are, I say, I'm sure, celebrities
Mhm.
who, when they're in a corporate space or they're in a business meeting, they ain't talking like they do on social media, or when they're on TV or wherever else they may be, or radio. They're talking in a way that is digestible to the people they're interacting with. And so like I've
Yeah.
learned that. I've
Yeah.
learned that skill, but I also know that there's an inverse to that when you're going into your own communities.
Mm.
Don't be putting too much in there.
Mhm.
Get you a 1 cent word, get you a 5 cent word. You don't have to use that big $10,000 word. Like, make it
Yeah.
simple. Keep
Yeah.
it simple. And I think that's really what it boiled down to. I don't think it's always necessarily a bad thing as much as it is like, relax. Keep it
Mhm.
simple. You can decompress a bit when you're talking with your folks.
I want to pause here for a second because I know some of you listening are going to relate to this next part. You've built a good life. You're showing up for everyone else, kids, partner, work, friends, and you've done all the right things to take care of yourself. The journaling, the workouts, the books, and yet you're still tired, still anxious, still feeling like you're running on fumes. If that's you, hear me now. You are not failing. You're just stuck in survival mode, and no amount of doing is going to work until your nervous system feels safe. That's exactly what you'll work on inside the Courageous Living group from Janice Holland. She's also known as the trauma teacher. She's a licensed psychotherapist and certified trauma model therapist who helps high-functioning individuals finally find relief. The Courageous Living Group is a 60-day nervous system reset for people who are done over-functioning, people-pleasing, and holding it all together. This group reset includes 8 weekly group sessions that are live, but are also recorded in case you can't attend the live sessions. You'll have lifetime access to the course portal, including replays, weekly journal prompts with integration practices, somatic healing tools, and a private WhatsApp group chat for support. Because you don't need to do more. You need to feel safe enough to receive the life you've already built. Click the link in the show notes below to get started. Well, it's such an interesting dynamic too that I'm sure like a lot of people don't necessarily think about in the forefront of their minds. I think a lot of people might potentially do this without thinking about it, right? Like it's just kind of like secondhand. It's not in the forefront of your mind. You're not sitting there thinking like, now maybe in the beginning, but I think as you become used to it and it becomes such a strength, like it just becomes second nature to just, you do it as you go. And I'm like doing this movement because I'm like, you just figure it out. Like you feel it, who you're around, and you know, okay, this is how I'm going to respond based on this. And like, I'm wondering too, as you think about the bothness or like all of the thoughts and feelings and experiences that kind of come along with these ideas of code switching, did you realize in the moment, or do you realize in the moment sort of the bothness of it? Or was it something that as you've kind of gotten older and after you've thought back and processed it, you've realized, oh, I'm actually holding all these things at once, and like, wow, that's beautiful and also really hard and like probably pretty exhausting. Like it really is both, right? Like I could see it being, it is such an incredible like skill. It's so beautiful and wonderful because you are speaking to people in a way they need to be like to be spoken to and they need to be heard. And also that's a lot of mental load on you to be doing that all the time.
Yeah, and um, I think about it as like, you know, what was those little bracelets they used to have back in the day that what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus met people where they were.
Yeah.
And that's my approach. Like, yeah, it's heavy, and what is that phrase like heavy is the head that wears the crown? Like,
Mhm.
I've been given this ability to be able to switch. I've been given the privilege of being able to go in environments where I have to switch.
Mm.
I've been given the honor of being a representative of my community. And I carry that. Like I carry that with honor and with dignity and with high regard. Like I'm humbled by the fact that I get to. Like everybody isn't able. Like everybody isn't invited to these rooms and being in these spaces and being in the corporate environments where, like their big decisions are being made and people are talking about a whole community and making decisions as such. Like
Mm.
it's an honor, but
Yeah.
it is a weight. It's not a burden, it's a blessing, but it is weight.
Mhm.
And so I think about it as that. Like I think about it sometimes it is heavy to try to carry that and try to switch. It is a nice ability, but it does have a weight to it. But I count it as an honor and a privilege. I lift weights for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Like I work out for a reason so that I can be able to carry it. Like, I'm talking literally but figuratively. Like, I
Mhm.
work out. Like I use my brain. Like I work my brain. I learn, I pay attention to spaces, like I've always done that, such that I can be able to go in these different spaces and code switch, and so I know what codes to
Mhm.
switch into, you know,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
and so it doesn't feel like a burden, and then when at those times when it does, as Stuart Scott said once, like I let somebody else carry that, when
Mm.
it's too heavy for me to carry, when it becomes too much weight, and I can't do it, and I feel overwhelmed by it. You know, I let somebody else carry it, or I talk to somebody. I'm blessed with a wife who's also a therapist. Like, So
Yeah.
she gets it. Like she allows me the space and grace to be able to release some of this stuff and also to
Mhm.
be me, and to decompress and like, tell me sometimes like you don't gotta do all that,
Mhm.
and some of it is personality and just temperament driven, it's the ADHD in me. Like I have ADHD, like it's not who I am, it's part of who I am. And so
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
I have to learn how to like, and it's the ADHD plus the OCD, like I have all these preparatory mechanisms in my mind and like I
Mm.
gotta do all these different things and I gotta like and sometimes it's just like, but is it necessary? Like, do
Mm.
you really have to do it? Is it necessary for the space that you're going into? Like, you
Yeah.
about to go to a meeting at a coffee shop. You gotta
Yeah.
wear a three-piece suit and a bow tie. Like, no, I don't. But who am I talking to? Like,
Mm.
maybe adjust it in that regard. And so, yeah, it can be weighty, but I don't count it as overwhelming. I just count it as an opportunity. I count it as
Mhm.
a privilege to be able to carry it and have access to spaces where I have to use it.
That's so beautiful. And I think the way that you truly believe that, like, it is just I don't know, I think it's so important. I think the way you view it makes a difference, even if other people don't know that's the way you view it, right? But it makes a
They do
difference.
now.
No, I love it, and this might be a loaded question.
Unload it then. Unload it.
Okay, let's do it.
Unload it, baby. Unload it. Let's do it.
If you took away all the code switching, you didn't have to code switch. Let's just say you
Mm.
didn't for whatever reason. Like, how would Darius show up right now, no matter who he was in front of? What does that look like for you?
Ooh, Nikki. That's not really a hard thing for me to answer. I wanna like if I think about it, I wanna be thoughtful about the way I answer. But like for me, I just show up as D, man. Like I show up as Darius. Like I don't show up as a title. I don't show up as a role. I don't show up as a representative. I don't show up as a reflection. I just
Mhm.
show up as me. Like I love people. I love to show love. Me showing up is just a happy person, somebody that exudes energy. My light can be blinding at times, but it's my light. If it's too bright for you, put some shades on or look away.
Yeah.
Me showing up as my authentic self with no code switching and no disarming mechanisms. It really is just me as a happy person. Like I love life. I love being alive. I love exploring. I'm a curious person by nature. Like I love to know and understand people better. I think that that probably comes again from me being a quiet kid, being kind of introverted. Like I just love people. Like I love life. I
Mm.
love the people in life. I love the spaces in life. I love the experiences of life. Like I love all those things
Yeah.
and I try to show up in a way that exudes that. And regardless of whether I have those disarming mechanisms of code switching or I don't,
Mm.
I'm going to show up with that mentality. Like, how can I show love and be a light to
Yeah.
somebody today?
Yeah. All right, I wanna push you here.
Let's go.
You talked a lot about words and vernacular. If you weren't code switching, how would you be talking? If you didn't have to think about, um, 5-cent words versus, $5,000 words, like, would you be somewhere in the middle? Would you just go all in because you used to read
I
the
got you.
dictionary? And would you just, like, not, be unashamed about it? Would you be more present because you weren't worrying so much about disarming people? Or, like, what would that you're still authentic, like, 100%. I know you. I've been around you,
Mm.
like, you're always authentic. But what would be slightly different if that code switching weren't there as much?
I think I understand what you're asking. So, like, if I hear you correctly, you're asking like, what would be how would I not just how I would show up, but what would I show up as? Like, how would I present? What words would I use? Like, how would I articulate myself if I didn't have the code switching? I didn't have to use those high level words or cheap words. Like, is that
Yeah,
right? Am I hearing it correctly?
basically what would be different? Like what how would you dress if you weren't worried about the room you were going into? How would you speak if you weren't worried about making others
Uh,
comfortable? And maybe a more emotional level might be for me, and this is from experience, right? Like if I'm not so worried about what others might perceive of me as I say it, would I be more present and have less anxiety because I'm not worried about making others comfortable? Now that's just my
yeah, that's good.
example.
I got you. I got you. No, that makes a whole lot of sense. I think I would be. I am, and you probably have already picked this up, and so with the listeners, like I'm a high energy person.
Mhm.
Not only do I talk a lot, I can fill up a space. I'll
Mhm.
say that. Like, there
Yeah.
there is a natural energy that comes with Darius. Sometimes that is too much for certain people, too much for certain environments, whatever. But that's who I am. Like, I've learned to accept that, and I think that's part of answering your question is I just it would be what it is now. Like, I just you know I I like me. I like Darius. Like, I love me, man. It took a long time for me to get to this place.
Mhm.
And, because I love me, I love what I love exactly in everything that I am. And so, I may use a big word when I feel like it. Like, I may talk about a movie, like
Mhm.
what it looks like is I'm a nerd. Like, I'm a
Mhm.
really, really cool nerd. That's a great way to describe it. I'm a really, really cool nerd.
Oh,
You
that's a
know,
good one. That's so good.
sometimes sometimes I'm a little geeky and I might geek out on like whatever it is.
Mhm.
I'll go down a rabbit hole and all of that, but at the same time, like, you know, I'm cool as hell. Like, I really am.
Mhm.
Like, I'm a cool ass dude.
Mhm.
Again, this ain't me being flexing and being arrogant. Like, it really is. Like, I am. I had to learn how to assert that. So I really had to learn how to be okay with Darius. And it took a long time for me to be okay with Darius. And so what that looks like now, is sometimes I'll use a big word. And, if I didn't have to worry about code switching and I didn't have to worry about that at all, and the perception that comes with that, you would hear a lot more big words. I studied the human language, the English language. I've learned the English language and have developed the mastery of it for a reason. I ain't doing this shit just for fun and
Yeah.
kicks and giggles. Like I enjoy words. Like, I really do. Like, I like to be able to articulate myself, and it took a long time for me to be able to find my voice. So
Yeah.
what that looks like now, and what that would look like in this practical example that you're using is, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna say what I want to say. Like, I'm gonna say
Mhm.
exactly what I want to say, how I want to say. I'm not gonna filter it based upon who's around, who may be in earshot, or
Mhm.
what they
Mhm.
may how they may perceive what I gotta say. Like, it probably be a lot more, swear words, used,
I feel
forgive me,
that.
Lord. This is just who I am. God know my heart, as the folks say. And sometimes it might just be like, I'm a nerd out on stuff that you probably don't care about. Like,
Mhm.
I love
Mhm.
comic books. I love comic book movies. I love, like, sci-fi. I love fantasy. Like, I love all that type of shit. Like, I
Mhm.
do. But at the same time, I'm a hip hop head. Like, I'm a sneaker
Mhm.
head. I like to shine sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not a bright person. Like, I'm not like a shiny, like, look at me, rah
Mhm.
rah guy. But, like, I like to shine. I like to
Mhm.
look good. I like to have my stuff together. I'm usually pretty crispy. Even if I didn't have to present a certain way, like, I still would be crispy because I just like, I like to look good. I like to have myself together. I see myself in the mirror. Like, I'm not oblivious to it. And
Mhm.
so what that looks like in practice, and in this example you use, and to answer your question, it would just be me. Like, I
Mhm.
would just be happy to be there. I'd be happy to be in the environment. I'd be happy to be happy and show love. I would say whatever I want to say. I would speak however I want to speak. I would talk about whatever topic that I wanted to talk about. It wouldn't be relegated to who I'm talking to, or what the environment is. Like, it wouldn't matter. Like, whether I'm
Mhm.
in a crowded mall or I'm in a small office space, I would talk at the same level that I'm talking at now. Like, I wouldn't
Mhm.
whisper. I don't have a very soft, low voice. And so when I talk boisterous. Like, it comes with
Mhm.
energy. I have to learn how to adapt that and bring that down a little
Yeah.
bit, and talk at a level that's more readily acceptable, and it's a lot calm, and a lot more soothing.
Yeah.
And talk in a way that people I don't want to talk like that. I don't want to talk like that.
I
I
didn't
don't
like
like
that.
that.
That doesn't feel like you.
It doesn't.
Even
But
you doing
but
that, I
some
was like, "No, I don't
some
like that,
people need to.
Darius."
And when I'm,
Yeah.
I'm talking with Nikki P, like, I know I can come with my Darius energy. Like, it ain't
Mhm.
it ain't no big deal.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
my spirit, my folks that are part of my circle, my connected community, like,
Mhm.
they get it. They're okay with that. They're okay with all that Darius brings. But, you know, again, like, I know everybody's not that way. So sometimes I just adapt it. But if I didn't have to, you get all of this. So you get a loud, sometimes chill, sometimes, like, don't talk to me. You know,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I may come off as a little bit of an asshole sometimes, but that's just what it is. Like, it really is just like, it just depends on how I feel. Like,
Mhm.
and my full and authentic self is somebody that loves words, that uses words, somebody that loves people and loves to show love, but also somebody that like just don't have a lot of F's to give
Mm.
sometimes. Like I just
Mhm.
today I may not feel like it. And
Yeah.
I don't really care if you feel like you're bothered by the fact that I feel like it or not. Like that's just what it is. And
Mhm.
so, you know, it may look different depending on the day, but
Yeah.
the truest way I can answer that is just, I would just be me. I'll be happy, I'd be thriving, I'd be the coolest nerd you'll ever meet. And that's just what it would be.
I love it. And what's great, and I feel like I should have called this out earlier, is you're even wearing a shirt that is a
Yeah.
word with a definition underneath it, which just like, I'm assuming you planned that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Nothing,
Okay.
nothing is nothing,
See,
nothing is
here
by
you go
happenstance with
again.
Darius. Never ever. So it's Kairos, and it says a unique moment in time.
Oh, I like that.
And the material, you can't see this, or you can't feel this, you can see it. But I'm very much about comfortable fabric. It's a texture thing. Like I love
Uh-huh.
relaxed fit cotton stuff, like all things, everything. One of the places that you and I mutually have in common that we work together
Mhm.
at,
Yeah,
they always had pretty comfortable shirts, and
that's
I
true.
appreciated that, and
That's
I
true.
accumulated a few of them.
Same. I've got way too many. Yeah.
It is what it is, and you know who you are. But like I love the relaxed look, like, and so like everything is by design, and so like the shirt, because that is the season and the moment that
Mm,
I'm in.
I love that.
I am in a unique moment in time, as all of us are,
Mhm.
and I want to acknowledge that. Like I want to acknowledge the fact that you know I'm not who I was, but I'm not who I'm going to be yet.
Mm.
I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be in this minute and in this moment, and I think we all are. We're all
We
just
are.
working through it.
Yeah. You're in the bothness, you're in the messy middle, you
Mm,
are in the
mm.
space between. I love it. I love it. So, all right. Well, honestly, I've only got one more question for you to round us out, but
Let's
before we
go.
go there, it's my,
So it's
re-
technically you get like this is like 1.5 questions though, Nicole. You say you got one more question, but
it's my
then it's
final.
like
No, no, no,
1.5.
no. That's fair. Okay. Before we get to the final ridiculous or relatable that I ask everybody, is there anything else that we didn't get to that you wanted to share or express before we kind of wrap up?
I just wanna, and I tuck my necklace in, but I don't know if you can see this. It says Lacey Love on there. That's my
Oh, I
daughter,
can't see that.
Lacey.
Yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that because Lacey's my girl. Like it took a long time for me to learn how to be a father
Mm,
and be the man that I am. And so I definitely want to acknowledge that. Like, that's my girl. Like I want to make sure that she has the happiest life and has the environment and like a lot of what I do, a good portion of what I do for her. I want to make sure that she has a life that she's comfortable in and that she wants to be in. She
mm,
wants to be here, because, just a lot that goes into that. But I also want to make sure that I acknowledge that, like,
mm-hmm.
and also,
Yeah.
my wife, Felicia, who I've acknowledged several times within this conversation,
Yeah.
is a big part of who I am. But outside of the family element, the one thing I would want to make sure I share is that, like, my business and what it is that I'm doing. I'm trying to build something, not just the business side of it, but really like I'm trying to build a movement. I'm trying to encourage change and love and show love. I'm trying to encourage people to be connected through all that I do, not just through business, but everything I do in the community is focused around that. My business is the MDC group. I
Mm-hmm.
do strategic planning and leadership development. That's what I do. That's my focus. That's what I understand. I've been in that world, but I think it's based on sharing the love of Christ through all that I do. But really, it's focused around people. We're all
Mm-hmm.
people. We're not KPIs. We're not stats. And if you start thinking about folks and everything that you do on a planning perspective, in terms of the people that are being impacted, I think you'll be more intentional about the work. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I try to do. And so, I would be remiss if I didn't share a little bit about what the MDC group is and what we do.
Mm-hmm. What
And
does that stand
that's
for?
what the more development and consulting group.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just said the
That's
MDC
great.
group for short. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I'm trying to create a movement around love,
Mm,
and living out the principles of Christ, going out and meet people where they are and just showing love and not having this religious construct of how you show love. Like it has to be to certain people and it has to be in certain we just need to be nice to each other.
I love that. All right. So
Come on
Final
with it.
question.
You sure?
Yes. This is it. First of all, thank you. Thank you so much for just being willing to come and to share, to talk about your experience. And, this is vulnerable. This is real. This is some of those things that I think a lot of people will connect to and also might feel scared to talk about or might not even be aware as much that that's something that they're doing. And so I think your sharing of this story is really important for others to hear. So thank you for that. My final question is, I ask everybody, what is something that you do that is ridiculous, but might be kind of relatable to other people?
That's a good one.
And here, if you need examples, and this is a little shout out to your wife, who's one of my favorite people, Felicia. We used to work together on a team, and we used to have this question that we asked everybody when they joined our team, which was, what are some weird, irrational fears that you have? And Felicia and I, you better believe, could go on and on for like 30 minutes of like pages
I
worth of
believe
weird
that.
stuff that we don't like. And so it kind
I
of
believe
twisted
that.
into
I'm
this
married
idea of
to it.
ridiculous or believable, But so think about your wife and any of those things and then figure out what your version of that is.
Uh, that's probably a dangerous way to preempt that. But well, I will say I think I can tell you one kind of weird thing that I've started doing as I've gotten older, and it's
Mhm,
maybe it's the grays and the beard, I don't know,
mhm.
but I hate to see a light unnecessarily on in a room. Like it
Yeah,
bothers
you
me.
hit that
I
age, Darius.
I am, and my family knows this, and I actually told Lacey this, my daughter, this once before. They're like, if I don't turn the light out in your bathroom, we beefing because I'm
Yeah.
always turning the light out in your bathroom unless we in conflict, and so I always turn the light out in our bathroom. It's probably now like just a dance that we do, but like I hate lights to be on for no reason. It's like ain't nobody in here. Why's the lights on in here? So so I turn out all the lights in all the rooms, and this is probably be the OCD too. Like I turn out all the lights in the room. I love natural light, so I will open
Mhm,
up like when the day is bright and it's daytime. I open up all the blinds, like let the natural light
mhm.
in. I like natural light, and so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I prefer that. But the weird thing is like I like it could be in somebody else's house or somebody else's business.
Mm,
I found myself in like hotels or like
that's so
offices
funny.
turning the lights off. Like if it's not on automatic, I'm gonna hit that switch. Like ain't nobody in here. What we got these lights on for?
So it's not
Wasting
even,
energy.
this is hilarious because so it's not even that you're paying for it. It's not even like you're running up your energy bill. It's just like, this is pointless. Nobody's in this room.
It's unnecessary. Why,
Yeah.
why are the lights on? Like
I mean, I don't
again, we're getting
disagree.
into the weirdness, but
Yeah,
like
I love it.
I get we need lights on, especially at nighttime when it's the city's lit up. But like in the daytime, open up a window, let that light come in there. Like don't have all these lights on in the office. That's like it got all the windows, and literally
I
all we gotta do
know.
is open
Yeah.
the blinds up. And Felicia knows this. It grinds my gears when it's bright outside, but you got the blinds like completely closed, like blackout blinds. They close, and the
Mm.
light on in the room. Like she do that in the morning time. Like, babe, I love you, but like turn these lights off. Why you got a light on? Like open the window up a
It's
little
so
bit. We can't
funny.
nobody see in here. Like, and so that's a weird thing I do. I also have been guilty of like unplugging stuff that don't necessarily need to be plugged in. I do that. I do that. And that's
Okay.
definitely an
Okay.
OCD thing. If like the air fryer, if it's plugged in and ain't nobody use it, I'm gonna unplug it and I'm gonna put it away. Stuff need to
It's
go back
fair.
where it's supposed to be. It's almost like that resetting the room thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I'm always trying to do. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You can come to
and
my
I
house
push it. I
and
push in my chairs too. When I leave a place, I push in my chairs. Like
I'm
I
really
try
bad
to,
at that.
because if you don't, somebody gonna trip over it.
That's true.
You did
That's
that.
true.
You did that. You're responsible for that trip and that fall. Okay,
Thanks, Darius. Now I got to add
you're
that to my
welcome.
list.
You're welcome.
Oh, man. You can
I just
come.
unlocked the new anxiety.
I know, right? It's not even anxiety as much as now I'll just be like, shit, now I'm responsible for making somebody fall if I don't do this.
You are. You are. Take that burden on. Carry it.
Listen, I got too much to carry, man. You can go anytime you need a little, like, box checked in your life. My whole house needs resetting. So nothing is in its place. You would be out of your mind over at my house right now. It is.
So the caveat to that
Oof.
is, in my mind, I'm resetting, but in other people's mind, my wife specifically, it's just I'm moving stuff around. and then we can't find it. And more often than not, because how my memory works sometimes, it's like, where did you put? I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Did you move there? I don't think I did. I don't think I did. But
Yeah.
I have.
You
And
did.
then it's like, oh, where is it? I don't know. I moved it. I was cleaning up, and it's somewhere, right? And I get that from my mom too. Shout out to Connie. She knows herself. She knows she'll be moving stuff around. My dad hates it, but that's where I get it from.
It's funny. I love it.
All right.
Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you again for being here. It's just so great to talk to you as always.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nikki P, for having me. Thank you for doing this show. I think it's amazing. I think what you're doing with the show, I think is so very much needed because it's who we are. Like we're all dynamic, and I think we have to be able to acknowledge and address the fact that we are dynamic in order for us to really be able to see each other. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say a big thank you to Darius for being with us today. He helped me understand that code switching can not only be a burden, but also a bridge, and that presence can disarm assumptions. And ultimately, love, as Darius puts it, can be a guiding code for how we show up. If you want to connect with Darius and the MDC group, I'll put the link below in the show notes. If this episode resonated with you, it would mean the world to me if you could support the show and help it grow. First, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts because your words help new listeners to find us. Second, share the episode with someone who might need it because that's how this community grows, through real people, real stories, and honest conversations shared from one person to another. Finally, make sure you follow the show so you never miss an episode. Just tap the little plus sign or follow button on the main show page. These really are the most impactful things that you can do for the podcast. So thank you again for listening. And this week, take some time to recognize what in your life is full of bothness. And remember, it's okay to feel all the things because so many times in life, it isn't either or, it's both.